Hanging out with Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
Hanging out is one of those features, and our guest today, I'll tell you about him just after this.
702
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
He's been a strategist in very interesting political parties in South Africa and a formidable player on the landscape of South African politics and just generally the socio-economic structure. And he's the national chairperson of ActionSA, and he stands as a central figure in shaping one of the country's fastest growing political movements, known for his sharp intellect, unshakable work ethic, and belief in transformative power of principled leadership. Michael Beaumont is my guest, and he's going to be joining us. We're shooting the breeze. We're just having a chat with him, and we'll play one or two of his songs. And we're just getting to know him a little bit more, as Clement would do between 10 and 11 every Thursday. So Michael joins us right now. Michael, hi. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Thabo, thank you very much. It's good to be speaking with you. I'm much more used to talking politics, much less used to talking about myself. So definitely an interesting platform.
Yeah. I also know that you are more comfortable debating issues facing our country and generally the globe than reflecting on yourself. So the challenge will be on both of us, because I will also be tempted to raise political issues more than personal issues. But nonetheless, thanks, Michael, for joining us. It means the world to us. And welcome one more time. Michael, a lot of people, will take you as a very serious individual, and it could be that you are. But I'm wondering, where did Michael Beaumont meet politics? And at what age were you one of those kids at school who was in debating societies, arguing with teachers, correcting the principal? Were you that nerdish boy at school, or you evolved with time?
I was a bit of both, actually. I was a sportsman and a fairly popular kid in school, so definitely on that side of things, life was good. But I was one of those kids that had the great fortune of having a really special teacher in their lives. I think everyone knows the value of an educator who just really animates something in a young person. And I had a Zulu teacher in school by the name of Sandile Koluse, who really animated a sense of politics in me. I think back, and he must have been very IFP, because those were the early 2000s in KwaZulu-Natal. But he definitely animated something in me. We used to argue passionately with one another, and he was the one who said, if you don't go into politics, you will be wasting your life. And it awoke something in me that I think had been asleep, largely because I'd grown up in a very privileged background, and politics had not been something that had really been awoken in me yet. And then I went to Rhodes University and studied politics there. And really, I think something stirred in me that it never stopped.
And this is in KZN. Hey, before we jump into politics, you are a KZN boy. Where about Durban?
Yeah, born and raised in Durban. I went to school in Michael House in the KZN Midlands.
Yes.
So very much part of my roots and certainly part of my heritage.
Yeah, and a very, very interesting school, especially in as far as performance is concerned. Perhaps is that why you're so competitive, because you had to claim your own in a school like that?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think that could definitely be a part of it. It was an interesting thing for me to go to boarding school at the age of 12, because it really makes you grow up and grow up quickly. I'd been in a day school in my primary school years, living at home, and going to a boarding school was something that made me grow up very quickly. It taught me the discipline of having to have a degree of structure and productivity in your life, and in a very competitive environment where there's lots of people competing for leadership positions, sports teams, academic grades. And certainly it animated a competitive spirit that I think was already there.
Then when did you meet the DA? Were you in the student body of the DA at varsity?
I tried. I must tell you, I went to Rhodes University, where the student body appeared to be far more interested in drinking than in politics. So the politics was fairly light back then. Certainly, I did get involved in politics in some of my vacation work. I volunteered for the DA in its KZN office when I was on vacation, and found myself working with some of their members of parliament for a period of time. And again, the political bug really stirred because I'd been studying politics at Rhodes. I loved the academic side of politics. But, while you're studying academic politics, part of you yearns for the practical side of politics when you see the very serious kind of changes taking place in the country. That was back in 2006 and 7, when we were coming off like a really strong economic growth period. But, serious cracks were starting to show in our democracy back then. Studying politics was great, but I wanted to get my hands dirty. And the DA offered that platform to me in those early days. And I started my first job in the DA just 2 days after my last exam at Rhodes University.
Liberalism, are those your politics? Would you say that defines who you are and what you're standing for today?
It's a difficult question, and I'm not evading the question,
Sure.
so please bear with me. There is liberalism in the South African context has gotten a very bad name, and rightly so, because many of the people who bandy it about tend to bandy it about with a paternalistic type attitude towards the question of race, which I've always found deeply offensive. And they tend to do it in such a manner where they want to erase the slate pre-1994 and just say, well, we're in a democracy, everyone's free, people could just pick themselves up by their bootstraps, and we don't need to talk about the past anymore, which, again, I find deeply offensive in the context of South African politics. So it's a tainted term, but certainly in as much as believing in individual freedom and the supremacy of the Constitution, the importance of a free market system that has the ability to grow an economy and lift people through a rising tide. Those are all values that I deeply believe in, along with a free press, strong civil society, the rule of law, and those elements I deeply subscribe to.
And one of the key markers thereof would be a reduced involvement of government, especially in the private side of the economy, meaning business must play a bigger role and government must have very little as far as ownership is concerned. And I'm just raising that not to spark a debate between us, but mainly because we find ourselves in that space where we argue neoliberalism in South Africa as a huge monster. On one end, some people, such as yourself and others, would then demonstrate and say, well, look at the state of the SOCs in South Africa. There is a case to be made for business to have more involvement than government, given how they've been handling this, and testament to various commissions that have come before this.
Well, this is always the shortcoming I find with academic arguments, and I suppose why I wanted to get involved in the real politics of our country. Is academic arguments produce this idea of like a binary. You either have a totally free market system or you have total state control. And no country in the world operates that way. You take a look at America, which is a country that puts itself forward as a neoliberal capitalist economy, and you look at the role that its president is currently playing in its economy, and you'd say very far from being totally free market as well. So I think it's about the question of what should be state controlled, what should be privately involved, and striking a balance in the context of your country. I don't think it's possible to look at models around the world and project them on South Africa. South Africa has an incredibly painful but also unique history that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed by very deliberate programs of government as well.
Yeah,
we are the most unequal country in the world. And the notion that most free marketeers would push of a trickle-down economics, addressing that level of inequality, for me, is just totally foolish.
And I said reduced, not eliminated deliberately, because I would have referred to the degree at which government has to be involved. And especially if you're a proponent of free market, you would want less involvement and not completely not involved. I would assume it's sensible for government to have some role. And I just wanted to test the quantity at which government should be involved, the degree at which they should be involved in those sectors for you, and maybe just to give us a sense of what your impressions are regarding to that, because that gives us insights into your economics and not just your politics.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what you really have to start with is the role government plays in creating the rule book. If we regard the economy to be a contestation, much like a sporting environment, you've got to have the rules in place to determine how the game is played. And government has a vital role in establishing those rules so that you don't have, for example, two companies coming together and colluding to raise the price of bread in a system that isn't regulated, just to give you a particular example. I think there's also an important role to play from a legal framework. We need to ensure that businesses operate in a legal framework in this country that recognizes the history of our inequality, and we can't ignore that in the work that is being done. But certainly, I think the biggest role government needs to play is creating that enabling environment. It needs to create fertile ground into which people can start businesses, into which small businesses can become larger businesses and employ more people, and to which we can just have greater prosperity in our country.
Yeah.
And I think in many ways, the confusion of economic policy in the last 31 years has been a huge part of the problem, because there are many things going for South Africa economically. But one of the challenges is what direction our country follows remains completely unclear. Many thought that after last year's national elections, there would be, a change of direction. But in many ways, it's very much, the same old ship heading in the same direction with a new bunch of sailors. And I think from that point of view, that kind of ambiguity about our economic direction continues to cost the country with the highest unemployment rate in the world.
My guest is Michael Beaumont, and he is the national chairperson of ActionSA, definitely one of the great political parties in South Africa. And he needs no introduction at all, especially if you are a political worm and you follow politics very closely. You'd understand his sharp way of doing things, and a way that has really contributed immensely to his party, and others would argue to South African political landscape in general. If you'd like to add a word or two, most welcome to do so, because we are shooting the breeze, and him and I every now and then would delve a little bit deeper into political waters than we intend to, but such is the nature of the beast. And it's your role as a referee to say, hey, we want to hear Michael's songs. What songs does he like? When he's chilling at home, what does he do? Does he go fishing? Does he enjoy watching movies? And we want to hear a lighter side of him. So feel free to be a referee and whip me back to line. It's 21 minutes after 10 o'clock, and you can send your thoughts, your views, and your questions for Michael to 072 702 1702, or just call us directly, which is what I'd prefer, on 011 883 0702. Text messages are also welcome. Michael, I should have started with this question, and I don't know why I forgot to. How do you pronounce your surname, bro? Because I'm always thinking I'm saying it wrong. Please, you say it so that the rest of South Africa can hear how it's said. It sounds French.
Yeah, I suppose the origins are French. We just pronounce it Beaumont.
Beaumont. Okay.
One of those weirdly spelt names from that point of view, if you're from an English-speaking environment. I suppose if it was French, it would be Beaumont. But I'm certainly not French and can't find anyone in my family who ever was.
Yeah.
But in South Africa, you learn to have a sense of humor with the way your name is pronounced.
Yeah, because I'm always thinking I'm saying it wrong. This sounds French, and here I am making an idiot of myself. The T should be silent. It's Beaumont, and I always think, am I saying it right? But I'm sure you come across that so often. But here's what I wanted to ask you on a more serious note. What did you love about the DA? And is there something that you miss from the DA? Surely this was, it broke your political virginity, so to put it. And this was your first. And there must have been some great moments there. And I'm keen to know, you had to then make a decision between Mashaba and DA. And you chose Mashaba.
Yeah, well, I think from my point of view, there were a lot of things that I fell in love with when I first joined the DA, talking back in 2006. But I would also say that the DA back in 2006 was a vastly different creature to the one I left in 2019. The irony is that the party was led back then by Helen Zille still. But even then, the Helen Zille of 2006 was someone who wanted to diversify the party, wanted to ensure it had greater appeal to the majority of Black South Africans in our country, wanted to build trust and shake off its legacy as a suburban white minority political party support base. And I identified with all of those things. I thought that was important. I think always knew that the DA wasn't perfect. Every political party is.
Yeah.
But that it was moving in the right direction. And I think over time, and particularly in that time between 2016 and 2019, there was that takeover of the DA by those classical liberals, or whatever you'd like to call them, who took the DA in a totally different direction and alienated many of those principles that I'd come to believe. And at the end of the day, I was forced to make a decision. Am I in service of a political party, or am I in service of a country? And obviously, believing the latter, I thought that there was an important time for South Africans to have a political alternative, which, fully appreciating there are 600 political parties registered in our country, and lots of them indeed. But very few of them offer a real and practical alternative that can sustain over different elections. ActionSA has not been without its own challenges, but it is a party that has stamped its mark. It was the 6th largest party in 2021 and the 7th or 8th, I think, in the last election. We have a lot of room to grow and a lot of growing to be done. But ultimately, I am of the view that there has to be an alternative to people of this country who want a party with those values, but wants a party that will have broad appeal to South Africans across racial divides of our country.
Did you feel conflicted? Were you at the crossroads? And I'm wondering, at which point did you have to make a decision? Because you'd had to decide either you are going with the then Mayor Mashaba, or the Democratic Alliance, and you break ranks altogether. And if I'm not mistaken, at the time you were working as in the mayor's office, and you were the head of that office, right? You were chief of staff in the mayor's office. Were you conflicted? And I'm wondering, how did you come to that determination? Because the one seemed a bit rosy and a little bit comfortable, and the easier route to take. You could have said, great, I'll go with the party, they'll place me elsewhere again. But you then chose the road less traveled, so to speak.
Yeah, I think so. And definitely a difficult 4x4 type of road. You'd call that one of those roads in the Northwest with big potholes. Because in real terms, I think what your listeners should know is that starting a new political party in South Africa is not for the faint-hearted. You see lots of people do it, very few succeed, because it's probably one of the highest barriers to entry of any industry in our country. It's very challenging. A lot of things are stacked against you, and you have to do a lot to try and surpass those challenges. So from my point of view, it was a decision that was made over time. It wasn't something that just happened overnight. What I saw going on was kind of like a slow motion car crash in the DA, with the takeover of that party. And it really was the case that in the city of Johannesburg, where we had been put in place to run a minority coalition in a very difficult circumstance, in a city that had only ever been governed by the ANC post 1994. We really wanted to see a party that backed our efforts and understood that the best way for that party to grow and break down trust would have been to deliver services and to break down those trust barriers through delivery to people who had never had services before. Ultimately, when the takeover of the DA took place, those kind of governance arrangements were demonized. They were thrown out as the baby with the bathwater. And effectively, those opportunities were collapsed. And when people who are now leaders of the DA started plotting with the ANC to remove Herman Mashaba, even when he was, by far and away the most successful mayor Johannesburg has ever had, not only, was it very clear to us that the party had left us behind, but in another way, it also becomes greatly ironic that some of those leaders now want to stand up and profess that they want to rescue Johannesburg from the very crisis that they perpetrated.
0727021702. There's a question from Alison here, and Alison says, when will ActionSA hold internal democratic elections, or is it an autocratic organization? Michael?
Far from it, Alison. We are a party that has branches built up in all 9 provinces. We have a decision-making structure that goes up to provincial and national structures of the party. We work very deliberately to ensure that when we make decisions, we go to the ground and we listen to what our structures and voters say. But we're also a very, very young party. We're a party that is just 5 years old. In the old age home of South African politics, that is but a babe. And we have a constitution that says that in order to have an elective conference, we must do so a certain period of time after the national and provincial election. So partly correct. But equally, we have to have a certain threshold of branches launched across the country so that if we go to a conference, it is clearly a conference that reflects the wishes of the South African people and their diverse nature across 9 provinces. And we are working hard to achieve that threshold. We still believe we'll do it this year. But certainly one of the interesting political dynamics that we continue to view is that many of our political opponents spend a great deal of time, talking about this autocratic internal decision-making nature of ActionSA, which is far from the truth. But on the other hand, there's no organization in the world that takes decisions based on what its political opponents want them to do. And at the end of the day, ActionSA is going through that maturation and democratizing process. We're doing so at our pace. Our members and our structures appear to be very happy. And I don't think we're going to start listening to our political opponents to guide us on that process either.
Are we going to have elections in the horizon?
Yeah, certainly. I was saying definitely we believe sometime this year.
Okay.
We're working to achieve a branch formation threshold that must be met first before we can get there.
Yeah.
But it's a process that we have to go through, and certainly not something that can happen overnight. And in many ways, suggesting that ActionSA as a 5-year-old party should be having the same level of internal elections as parties that have been around for decades is just not recognizing the internal democratizing and maturation process that a young party has to go through.
My guest, Michael Beaumont, ActionSA National Chairperson, joins us on. Is talking to us about this, that, and the other. Feel free to venture your thoughts about his work, about him, about everything else that you would want to know on 011-883-0702. I don't want to neglect this text from Bongani because I will get into trouble. Bongani says, morning, can you kindly ask Michael what his favorite movies are and what his favorite book or novel is and why? Coming from Bongani. Michael?
Sure. I always hate questions about my favorite book or movie or song because there's so many good ones and picking one always feels like I'll be offending the others. But I'll tell you ones that I'm into at the moment, and that's the best I can do.
Yeah.
I recently watched Oliver Stone's historic JFK.
Yes.
Which really is an incredible movie, played by Kevin Costner, who passed away recently. Characters like Joe Pesci and other great actors, and that really was a fantastic movie, one that sticks with you.
Yeah.
In terms of a book, Peter Harris is an author I've enjoyed who's written a lot about South African history. I am a bit of a history buff. He wrote that book, Birth, about the 1994 elections and just how close we came as a country to the democratic project falling apart before it even began. And I think there are so many things we take for granted about our democracy and our electoral system, especially as a younger person. I can't say a young person anymore. I've got to say a younger person, But someone who who wasn't around for the 70s and much of the 80s, etc., and to actually see how close the democratic project came falling apart in those early years, which I think was scary. He also wrote that book in a different time, where he contrasts the work of the MK operatives in the country and the secret police clandestine activities of the apartheid government. And it really, fantastic book, great author. Also, someone who was at Michael Rhodes University, so we shared that connection, I suppose. But I really enjoy history books about our country and can't put that one down at the moment.
You're a JFK kind of person, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm not one of those people that hold up JFK as an icon. I think he was an interesting leader.
And you've got a shrine of JFK at home.
No, nothing of the sort. I'm not one of those. I actually have come to view over my time in politics that leaders are interesting for different reasons. Yeah. They all have vices and virtues. None of them are saints. None of them are gods. They're all deeply flawed in their own way. And really the objective is to learn from leaders and what they bring to the table and what they don't. And I think both of those things are as important as one another.
Sure. Let's go to some calls, and in a short while, I'll ask us to play a song or two from the choices that you have given our team. 011-883-0702. Godfrey, you are in Hammanskraal. Morning, Godfrey.
Yes, how was it?
I'm free. How are you, Godfrey?
I'm well, man. I think my question to Michael is that in politics, we know that politicians like to flip-flop. We were playing a clip by Gayton McKenzie, and we waited for the movie on Tuesday. We never saw the movie. Okay? Yes. And let me park that one.
Yes.
But then Clement Manyathela, the leader of ActionSA, was adamant and very concrete to say they will never in their entire political life work with ANC, because ANC is the reason why we have corruption all over the show, provincial, municipality, you name it.
Yeah.
But to our surprise, they worked with ANC in Joburg municipality, in Tshwane, for them to have mayor in Tshwane, they worked with ANC. What made them to change, and what should we then begin to trust them? Because if they have this particular position and then they make a roundabout 10 on it, it makes us begin to worry about their stance and their political hegemony. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Godfrey. Michael, over to you.
Yeah, great question, and thank you, Godfrey. It was an interesting kind of maturing point for ActionSA. We had always, as you say, been the party that said never, ever shall we ever work with these parties, and we will always work with those parties. And I suppose it was part of growing up that we had to make mistakes and learn, because there's no better example than the municipality in which Godfrey lives, the city of Tshwane, where we came to realize that the coalition that was led by the DA was deeply, deeply flawed. All of the research independently has shown that service delivery was hugely skewed in such a manner that service delivery to the townships had declined over that period of time. Unlike the DA and the Freedom Front, which were coalition partners that had very little vote in the townships of Tshwane, we had considerable support in that particular, in those communities. And we had to make the decision, are we going to stick to our perspective for the sake of, saying that we didn't change our view? Because people who don't change their opinions don't change anything. And from our point of view, when things change, we have to change with them. And as a virtue of the changes that we've made, we now have an ActionSA mayor in the city of Tshwane, in our capital, that, quite frankly, regardless of your political views, it is now becoming the objective opinion of most South Africans that city is now moving forward. It is stabilizing its finances in ways that are categorically provable. It is generating improvements in its governance and auditing systems. And at the same time, service delivery is happening in places where it's quite frankly never happened before. No better example than Godfrey, whose community in Hammanskraal lived without clean water for, about 18 years, people dying of cholera. And if anyone believed that ActionSA should cling to coalition partners who continue to lead a government where people in the year 2022 were dying of cholera, then I'm afraid we're not going to make decisions based on loyalties to parties. We need to make decisions based on loyalties to South Africans. And that decision we made in the city of Tshwane has served the residents of that municipality very well. And Thabo, if I may just say another
Okay.
point. I mean, ActionSA is not in coalition with the ANC in Johannesburg. The DA has gone out of their way to try and make that point. But let me say this. The only political party in South Africa that is not in coalition with the ANC at one level or another is MK. Every other political party is in coalition with the ANC. And this thing where people want to throw mud on the basis of working with other political parties, we need to grow up and we need to say that parties in our country must work together. They must put aside their differences and they must be measured not by who they work with, but what they deliver while working with other political parties in that municipality.
Yeah.
Because many of the residents of Tshwane couldn't be happier right now that we are working in that fashion.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, the objective should be to share that experience with other places.
And I think the question is not necessarily about working together, whether it's effective or not. It's about your assertion right at the beginning, including at that very famous IEC house in Tshwane, where Mayor Mashaba dismissed the late Jesse Duarte completely. And those lessons of saying never say never, I think they also come with some humble pie that leaders have to eat. And do you find that having had that humble pie, you'll be more reticent of such in the future?
Oh, absolutely. And I think as leaders, we eat humble pie daily. So certainly a big part of our diet.
Yeah.
And we've learned that mistake.
Yeah.
You must have a look, Thabo, that our involvement in the multi-party charter, which we believe would be a strong vehicle for South Africans to see an alternative, but actually it just turned out to be a political vehicle for the DA to decampaign its own partners, which is all that it was. And, you can imagine going to ActionSA structures after the election where that vehicle was basically done in such a way where, the DA went to many of the people in suburban areas who voted for ActionSA and said, don't bother, just vote for us. Why buy retail when you can buy wholesale?
Yeah.
And many people in townships found us to be toxic by association with the DA by virtue of that arrangement. For us, that was a huge learning, and our structures certainly fed us a lot of humble pie. And that's why now our position is that we will make decisions on coalitions on the merits of the place in question.
And that element of sobriety and being circumspect of such assertions, allow me to ask this. Will you ever join the GNU as ActionSA?
Well, ActionSA has always said that we will be open to consideration, but we have requirements that we would need to be met before we join. We were invited in June 2024, and we were one of the few parties that said no, thank you. We were invited again during that time of the budget turmoil, and we said again, no, thank you. And that is because we see the GNU as a fundamentally flawed vehicle. It has not agreed to any reforms in our country. And effectively, the only thing they've ever managed to negotiate is who gets what position and what vehicles they will be driven around and etc. What it has never done is said, this is how we'll change our economy. This is how we will improve our criminal justice system. This is how infrastructure will be improved in our country. And that this collective of parties, regardless of who leads the portfolio, will work together to achieve that objective. What you've got now is this bizarre dynamic where you've got a multi-party delivery of the status quo that people voted out in the elections of May last year, with the economy worsening, the job crisis deepening, and political parties who want to run around claiming hollow victories in their own departments, like these departments can be halved off from the rest of national government, when in fact, the way a coalition is supposed to work is whether or not your party leads a portfolio, the entire government should be working on an agreed set of reforms that reflect the reforms the country asked for in May last year. And that just simply hasn't happened under this GNU. If there was an appetite to change that, ActionSA may be open. But it appears that there is no appetite.
Yeah, let me just quickly take this call and then we'll come back to the conversation. 011-883-0702. Slindile, you are in Kagiso. Good morning to you.
Hey, good morning. So, I've listened to the answer that is given by the caller who called and asked why they're working with the people that they've swear they're never going to work with them. Now, with the answer that he's giving, will it bring back my vote? Because that's why I voted for them. Since there's a lot of maturity that they've gone through in working with the ANC, you can't say these people have done this kind of damage in the country, and you have to work with them, and you just simply give a diplomatic answer like that, because my vote is gone, and now they are in government. What do they do with my vote, and why would I vote for them again in that stance? So this answer that he has given, I know he has answered it, but it's not satisfactory to a voter like me who voted for them.
So your basis of voting for them was purely premised on them not working with the ANC at all costs?
Yes, because I wanted something completely different from what the ANC has been done, because other parties were doing the same thing of saying we're not going to vote for this one, we're not going to work with this one, and yet they broke that promise. They too did the same thing. So what's left for me?
Well, he'll answer now. I'm not sure how he's going to give you your vote back, but let's hear his response. Michael?
Yeah, thank you. And I didn't catch the caller's name, but
Slindile.
certainly Slindile. Thank you, Slindile. I identify with your frustration, and I want to explain why. Because I share the view that what we should have seen in South African politics is all other political parties coming together and finding governance arrangements that can make changes from the failed policies of the ANC, which over the last 31 years have delivered crisis in our country. That's what we would have liked to have seen. ActionSA would have availed itself for those kind of governance arrangements. But what we saw in the May 2024 elections is former opposition parties basically stampeding from the opposition benches to give the ANC the majority that the voters denied them in those May elections. Which, if you think about it, and this is the heart of Slindile's frustration, for what it's worth, the frustration that I share, is because the problems we are facing today is not because of the EFF or MK or IFP or any of these parties. It's because of ANC governance of the last 31 years. And I think voters should have more seriously been given consideration for an alternative without the ANC than what we see there today, because despite the ANC being the biggest losers in the election, they were the biggest winners in the GNU. Because effectively, things carry on like nothing changed in that election. Unfortunately, though, ActionSA doesn't operate in a vacuum. While all those other political parties have stampeded for power, if we had done what Slindile was suggested, we would just be sitting in the corner with our finger on our lips, unable to influence South African politics in any way.
Yeah.
And when you consider the crisis of governance that is taking place and the crisis of service delivery in our country, we didn't think that was the right view. Rather, what we did is we'll take decisions on their merits. We did so in the city of Tshwane, not that far away from Kagiso. And if Slindile can look over the borders to see what is happening in our capital city by virtue of that governance arrangement, my advice would be judge us based on what we deliver. Yeah. Don't judge us on who's we're working with per se, because delivery is the thing that matters.
Yeah, I just want to come in here, Michael. I'll play a voice note a little bit later, and there was one concern that I'm allowing you to get away with matter more than you should. Remember, this is Hanging Out feature, guys, and the intention of this particular element was to get to know Michael a little bit more. So I would be ordinarily happy to exchange this and that with them. This generally, just to give you an impression if you've just tuned in, on Hanging Out feature, we get to know our guest a little bit more, and we allow them the luxury of having to indulge themselves and express themselves, because we're hanging out. We want to hear more from them, and it is not necessarily an interview where we requested Michael to come through to speak specifically about one ActionSA matter. You may raise any of those, but the intention is a little bit different from my end of the stick, in a sense that we're trying to get to know the guy a little bit more. So I'm not allowing him to get away with anything. that's a testament to that is the fact that I'm supposed to be playing one or two of his songs, which you wouldn't do in a current affairs interview, right? So I thought, let me draw that distinction and make that very, very clear that it's not a paid-for interview where Michael says whatever he wants. It's a hanging out feature. Clement does this every other Thursday. We're getting to know him more. So I think let's be very clear on that. 9 minutes to 11 o'clock. Let's go to the voice notes, please, Abel, on 072 702 1702.
Hi, Thabo. Please ask Michael, how do they find somebody as hardworking as the mayor of Tshwane? Do they have like a process in place to identify, these people, or do they stumble on her? Because whatever that they're doing, if they can replicate what the skills that she has, if they can do it for South Africa, then would be on the right track.
And that would be Nasipi Moyo, right? That they're talking about. One of your ace star mayors and activists, right? Leading the Action SA contingent of leaders, Michael. Surely you're proud of her work.
Oh, incredibly. But I've worked with Nasipi since 2014. And in many ways, I was kind of one of the central people who said, you can't be a back office person any longer. You've got a lot to offer South Africa and governance in South Africa. She had always worked in the background as I had as a chief of staff and in roles like that. And she's an exceptional human being. I'm very glad she heeded the advice and she accepted the charge that Herman and I gave her to lead that municipality. Because as you can see, the rest is history. But she's an astonishing person, and we pride ourselves in combining excellence and youth. The average age of an Action SA member is actually just 37 years old, which in South African politics is but a babe. So we've got a lot of young people, a lot of very talented people.
She belongs to the youth league.
Key to give them the platform.
Yeah.
Well, in some political parties, you can be 65 and belonging to the youth league. So 37 is very young.
Listen, Michael, please give us a sense of some of the songs you chose. I'm very notorious whenever I'm standing in for Clement that I hardly play music because I'm interested in people saying more, because that's the intention of getting to know more. And Michael knows very well I would have taken him on many of the issues that he has raised. But the intention of this element is to get to know him more. One or two songs, Michael, do you listen to music? People would think you're very serious and you hardly smile and you attack other politicians and you are so fact driven whenever you speak. Do you chill and listen to some bit of music? What are your favorite songs?
I do, for what it's worth. I love music. I have so many favorites that I'd hate to try and elevate one above the others, but I chose 3 songs for the sake of sharing it with this interview that I listen to a lot lately, that I enjoy and I'm in the mood for lately.
Yeah.
If you talk about the genre of classic rock, I love that song by the Traveling Wilburys, End of the Line. It's just a good feel-good song, Friday afternoon, lighting the fire, and want to kind of feel good about life itself, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, let's
I'm a big lover of jazz.
Of jazz as well.
Okay. Yeah, jazz as well.
Really?
Herman introduced me to jazz, and I've been unable to. No, he did. He's a big jazz.
No,
foodie,
I know, but
I
was going to speak about his piano playing skills, but that's an argument for another day. I'm sure you've seen that video.
Get me in trouble now.
I want to get you fired. Let's play a bit of End of the Line just for the vibes, Abel. End of the Line, that's the name of the song, Michael Beaumont's choice. Michael, I loved chatting to you. We should do it some more. And thanks really for indulging us. We wish you and Action SA all the best.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you so much, Thabo.
Michael Beaumont, National Chairperson of Action SA, 3 minutes to 11 o'clock.
Hanging out with Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.